All right, I hear you. You want me to talk about this. So here we are. We're doing it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to address it head on. Now, there's a select group of people that will consistently comment under every single one of my videos, warning about how bad private internet access is and how they're connected to intelligence and how they used to be scammers and all of this. And I've seen this comment so many times now. The first like 3 or 4 I did reply to. I got a bit sick and tired of copying and pasting the same responses. So in this video, I actually want to go through some of the misconceptions, not just around VPNs, but more specifically private internet access. Now, this video is not sponsored by private internet access. I do have an affiliate link, but that's not for this video, it's for my whole channel. And as always, it is down below. To be clear, the commission I'm getting from private internet access is significantly lower than the commission I was offered by NordVPN. I haven't chosen private internet access for money. In fact, I'm more than happy to show you the emails of me turning down NordVPN. So what am I talking about? Well, all over the internet, especially in the past year, and that will become very apparent shortly, there's been a lot of negative sentiment around private internet access, and it tends to come from a very particular group of people. And we're going to talk a little bit about it because I feel I have at least a social responsibility to defend my stance in promoting private internet access. If I'm going to promote it to you, I've got to do it with chest and I've got to come at you with some facts. So the first thing that comes up a lot is that private internet access is owned by Cape Technologies. And Cape Technologies used to be called Crossrider. That, so far, is correct. But one of the biggest claims that has been made is that Crossrider used to be a malware company and they were making software to infect people's PCs. Well, sounds like a pretty cool story. And that's all it is. Crossrider basically made an APK. And what it did is it allowed ads to run on gaming apps or shopping apps. Basically, if you created an iOS or Android app, you could use Crossrider as a way to get your adverts to appear on the bottom. It's essentially an ad network. Google does the exact same thing with the Google ad network. And essentially, if you own an app or say if you've created your own game, you can implement that sort of software that Crossrider was making to actually have ads come up. Now, there were people that were exploiting this APK and they were actually using it as a way to get malware to appear on people's devices, computers, phones, whatever. Now, Crossrider actually tried to tackle this in numerous ways. And by the way, there are links down below for all the individual points if you want to learn a bit more about what actually happened. But essentially, they decided to actually pull the software completely and then people started spoofing it, creating clones of it, and this whole thing started growing that Crossrider was a malware company. No, they were not. I just want to very quickly touch on something that's really important. So back in the day, one of the big articles that blew up around Crossrider and malware and all of this was actually an article written by Cyber Insider. Now, Cyber Insider is a relatively trustworthy outlet that has been at the forefront of exposing many companies over the years. Now, obviously that article blew up and other companies like MPN caught wind of this, and other VPNs, of course, latched onto this and started even running ads against these articles so their VPNs would appear on these pages. Now, off the basis of this, we're now seeing present-day media reporting on old articles from MPN and even old articles from Cyber Insider. And it even got to the point where Cyber Insider have actually gone back to their original article and completely changed it. I quote, "Based on the information and other sources, we previously assumed that Crossrider was the creator of this malware. However, it's important to get the details exactly right. So let's dig deeper." And you can pause this on the screen right now to have a look. But essentially, they confirmed that Crossrider didn't make any malware at all, and people were just abusing the software as a way to actually plug in malware to people's devices and create configuration profiles on Macs and even admin profiles on Windows to then launch attacks on PCs. But Crossrider were nothing to do with these attacks taking place. The article also goes into detail with a Crossrider employee issuing statements about how they tried to mitigate these risks and how they tried to tackle it. Then, of course, it goes on to explain how the platform was shut down because trying to mitigate this risk just became the core focus of the company, and it got to the point where it just wasn't worthwhile doing anymore. Now, it's very interesting that if you look at some of the original articles, they directly reference the Cyber Insider report on this. So they're referencing redacted, incorrect information, and that is the basis for all of these videos we're seeing on YouTube about private internet access. By the way, all of the articles that we've referenced against private internet access all have one thing in common, and we will talk about that later in the video. Now, the next thing that comes up is that they've worked with various different security agencies celebrities and with people that have been previously involved with internet crime groups. And that's true, but context is very important. They're creating security software. They need to bring people in to stress test that software. They need to get people in that will tell them how they would break it. These are white hat hackers. This is something that's been well known for many years across many industries, including our governments that hire hundreds, if not thousands of them a year. Because when you're creating a security software, yes, you have to bring in the bad guys to actually stress test that software, because the best people to actually test it are the people that know how to crack it and know what the exploits are. So to make the systems more secure and to make private internet access safer, they bring in people to stress test it to make sure that none of these exploits can be used. This is very common and it happens across nearly every single VPN company. Next, we have the articles on MPN, Mint Press News. Now, this is a really tricky one to talk about because no matter how you phrase it, I look bad no matter what I say. I don't want to get into the geopolitics of Israel, Palestine, and all that stuff going on. However, Palestinian-based tech companies tend to have an emphasis and tend to have a bias against Israeli tech companies. Maybe understandably so. There's a war going on. It makes sense. But in the case of Mint Press News, which by the way, at the moment is the biggest driving force against private internet access, they're a company with a Palestinian CEO where nearly every single article on that website is bashing Israeli companies or bashing Israel. In fact, if you go through all of the articles that have been referenced by other YouTubers, in total I found 6. All 6 of them are written by pro-Palestinian people. Now, I'm not saying that because they're Palestinian that they have a bias. I'm saying that we can look on their social media and see that they're very actively against Israel. Like I said before, it doesn't matter what your politics are either way on this. When criticizing a company or trying to be a critic of a company for their security practices, you shouldn't allow your biases to dictate the facts. Also as well, using Ground News' factuality checker, where they basically check news against other outlets and other articles, it would appear that every single news article that comes out, MPN's coverage of it tends to rank at some of the lowest factuality scores out of all of them. I'm not saying that there isn't any merit to maybe some of the accusations that are being made, but you need to understand the context and the bias. Already in their report on private internet access, there were numerous things that they did indeed get wrong. For example, peddling the narrative that Crossrider made malware. They didn't. They made software that was abused and turned into malware by nefarious people, of which Crossrider acted accordingly and then pulled the software. I'm not interested in getting into the geopolitics of other countries where I don't live and I don't necessarily understand what's happening in those countries, and I am a YouTuber. I'm not qualified to talk about those particular topics. But what I am qualified to say is that I understand bias when I see it. You can clearly see a lot of the websites that call out private internet access have a history of just calling out Israeli companies. There's a bias there, so immediately everything comes with a pinch of salt. And by the way, for the record, maybe I have a bias because I have an affiliate link. You can do what you will with that, but I know that I'm keeping my integrity intact by promoting private internet access. Like I said, I can get a bigger paycheck from promoting another VPN, but I don't. The next thing is the claim that they submit information to governments on a regular basis. I've seen a few channels and a few articles claim this now. Well, private internet access have a public report, an annual report that they issue every year, and it's on their website. You can go and see it, you can check it, and they say exactly what data has been submitted and what data has been requested, and out of how many requests did they actually submit data to. They also give some more information about how various bits of information was protected, blah, blah, blah. You can read into all of that on there. But it's there. I have not yet seen a single article, YouTube channel, or anything criticizing private internet access and also mentioning this transparency report. It's a transparency report that many VPN providers don't have. The next thing is security. So I see this a lot, but other YouTubers that are promoting other VPNs will then basically go on to attack another VPN. And I'm not doing this from a position of attacking other VPNs. I'm doing this from a position of defending the VPN that I support and I use. There's people saying that other VPNs like Malware, for example, are more secure. Malware have had 3 in the past 3 years, where people's account information and log data, which supposedly wasn't tracked, was found on the dark web. Now, I'm not saying that Malware VPN isn't secure, but choosing a company like Private Internet Access, which pretty much has an impeccable record for security, and pitting that against a company that doesn't, doesn't make sense to me. Now, in a recent video made by another creator where they basically went after other creators for promoting private internet access, one of the core things that was brought up was that private internet access have some websites where they write reviews, and some of the reviews are about private internet access. Essentially, they're rating their own VPN as highly ranked. Now, whilst it's true that Cape own other websites, a lot of the writers for these websites are independent, but also for a number of different categories, this website has ranked other VPNs as being better for certain activities. The thing that I found really funny about all of this is the source for all of this information was a report done by Windscribe about other VPNs. Windscribe isn't just a news outlet, they have their own VPN. So quoting a website that has its own website which writes reviews about its own VPN, calling out another company for having a website that writes reviews about its own VPN is such a nonsensical argument. Now, I did mention this down in the comment sections, but magically my comment disappeared. Now, I have mentioned this in comments before, and people say that I can't use this in my arguments for private internet access because it's another YouTuber and we're all the same and all of this stuff. Linus Tech Tips obviously promoted private internet access for years. Then for a period, he started asking questions to private internet access when stuff started coming out online. He then did a video of private internet access where he answered all of his questions, and now he's continually working with them. And this is the last thing I want to talk about, and this is probably the bit of the video where I'm going to get a bit passionate with you all, but I think it's important. There are many creators out there that just shill a product. They'll just shill anything. They'll take any brand deal. Now, across my main channel, and to be honest, thanks to you guys for subscribing, but over the past 2 weeks on this channel, I've been receiving the best part of maybe 100 brand deal offers a week. That's a significant amount, considering this is like a new channel. I get a lot of offers for brand deals, and I say no to nearly every single one of them because I'm human and I don't have the time by myself to vet them all. I do have a management company and they're sick. They help me with everything. But before I go on camera, even though I'm wearing a mask, before I go on camera and before I shill a product, I at least like the ability to sleep at night. I think that's pretty important. So I make sure I do all of my due diligence. Now, private internet access just didn't come out of the blue. I've had since I think I was at 3,000 subscribers on my main channel when I first started working with them. And the first thing I did was ask them a load of questions, because that was around the time when Linus Tech Tips was like talking to them and did all the interview and stuff. And I started asking them questions. Now, I have a direct contact at private internet access and I ask regular questions. I don't like getting into the narrative driven stuff, and there may be concerns with private internet access, but I'm telling you for a fact it's going to be impossible to know whether they're legitimate concerns because of this whole Israel company bad rhetoric that's spreading all over social media. It's impossible to actually see through those biases. Things like Ground News, for example, I know they're not sponsoring this video, by the way, but that does help because you can actually break apart those biases and understand a little bit the narrative from those outlets. But even then, I know information comes out all the time that's demonstrably false about not just private internet access, but many companies, whether they're even like Palestinian companies. I won't read any news about like Palestinian companies written by an Israeli outlet just because there's going to be a bias there, or at least I think it's safe to assume that there will be some bias there. And it's the same case with private internet access. I get so many comments and emails that, like, I've had some vile emails from people where they've just read like an MPN article, or they've seen a YouTube video which is full of inaccuracies for one, or that video quotes something like NPN or another news article that has a bias, and that's their basis for basically going on a campaign against everyone that promotes them. Now, to be clear, I am making the problem worse by making this video. I am 100% making this issue worse because it's like when you talk about it, you speak it into existence. Like, I'm bringing awareness to the fact that there is bollocks on the internet about them. But I also think I have a social, moral, and ethical responsibility to make this video to not just defend myself, because I'm not going to be accused of being a shill and not doing my due diligence when it comes to the brands I work with. But also, I hate the fact that it's now seen that VPN is bad and this VPN company is bad because news article said so. It's not black and white, and we're basically now dealing with stuff that happened in 2018, false articles that were written. People believe that. People write their own articles based on the findings of someone else. And if you go all the way back and actually find out what really happened, for example, with Crossrider going into Cape, you realize actually Crossrider didn't do anything wrong. Maybe they didn't handle the situation perfectly, but they weren't injecting malware into people's computers or phones. And this is where we start to see negativity spread on the internet and bullshit spread on the internet. I think the internet's the only place where bullshit talked and the truth walked. But yeah, anyway, I thought I'd make this video to clarify. I didn't want to get into the technical side of VPNs and how they work. I've already covered that on the channel. This was more the ability for me to put my ethics out there and let you guys do as you will with it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.